What is up, guys? Slasher here. Today we're going to take a look at a good, somewhat meta, rogue deck, and we're going multicolor today. So without further ado, let's jump into it. We have Cooler Mill. Now, we are running 52 cards in general, it's a good amount. It's a little high. I mean, you can go 50, which is comfortable. 52 is, I would say, like the sweet spot where to stop. We have 6 cards for the Z deck, and we've got some side deck for other choices you can play overall. So let's start with the leader, though. So overall, what your leader is doing is every time you use a battle card or a card in general to minus the power on an opponent's battle card, they will have to take the top card of their deck and send it to the drop. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to maximize the amount of times we can do that to our opponent. So we have the Unawakened side. When this card attacks, draw 1. When the power of one of your opponent's battle cards is decreased, your opponent places the top card of their deck in the drop. And that's not once per turn, which is awesome. We have the auto here, once per turn. If it's your opponent's turn, when the power of one of your opponent's battle cards is decreased by the skill of one of your battle cards, draw 1. So you can't use like after image technique and then hopefully draw 1. It has to be a battle card. And that's why we're trying to arrival more on our opponent's turn than we are on our turn. And then of course, when your life is 4 or less, draw 1, switch 1, flip the card over. We've got the Awakened side, similar to the same thing. Draw 1 when it attacks. When their power is decreased, your opponent mills 1. When the power of one of your opponent's battle cards is decreased by his skill of one of your battle cards, draw 1 card. So, let's jump into the list. We have Sensu Beans, 3 copies, not a problem. We have Testing Oppositions, 3 copies. It's going to help counter and, of course, help you self-awaken, which is awesome. Then we've got 2 After Image Techniques. It's a great thing for early game as well. You can make your opponent mill, which is good. And of course, it can help you self-awaken. If you have 5 or more from the sparking from your drop, you can do it for free as well. You can always replace this as well with Dirty Burst. So if you're going up in a matchup against, say, Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta or something like that, you can play a card like this. Probably a better choice for it. But for now, if you're just going straight damage and you want to have fun at some locals, this is a lot of fun to play. We've got Oceanus. Now, this card is bonkers for this deck. So you can use it early game. Maybe if let's say you see 2 in your hand, you can use one of these earlier game, say like turn 2, turn 3. They're probably going to just do the top 4. They won't give 2 rat's asses for it, really. But then when it gets later game, then it's going to get to a point where they're going to have, say, like 12 cards in their deck left, but they won't really know because they've just been constantly milling the top cards constantly. And they're going to get to a point where you're going to use this as a counter, and they're going to be like, let me first, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Nah, never mind. I'm not going to attack. Because of this card's ability. Choose 1 card in your hand and discard it. Negate the attack. Then play this card. If you played a card, your opponent can't attack for the turn unless they place the top 4 cards of their deck and their drop each time. That is a lot for this deck. And of course, during your opponent's turn, reduce the energy cost of this card in your hand by 3. So it just becomes a 1-cost little blocker negate attack, which is awesome. But yeah, it is a lot of fun when you do that to your opponent. Because at first, they don't really notice that they're starting to thin out their deck a bit. And then when it gets late game, they're just like, oh my god, where did it all go? And then it goes horribly wrong. But then we've also got Jaren for the Unison. This card is pretty good in general. I mean, I would love to see an improved version, seeing that Red's kind of just locked to having 1 very good Unison, which is the Gogeta. But this is great for the deck overall for what it does. When your opponent plays a battle card or a Unison, you minus 10k that card on play, which is awesome. And then it's got its +1 where you get double strikes, and now this card has some damage, or the -3, you can get rid of cards ignoring barrier. And then that is our Unison, so we want to try and play that around turn 3, maybe even turn 4, depends how aggressive your opponent is. We've got Videls. You just Spirit Boost 1 with this, counterplay, and then the auto will go off of this card, so it gets past Deflect. and you can choose 2 of your opponent's battle cards and they get minus 20k. So that's another mill and another mill, which is awesome. Then we've also got the apes for the draw. The apes are just a standard thing for this deck. You want to be able to have cards in your hand, and because you're using a rival, you're emptying out your hand pretty quick. So having a card like this is very good to have. If you're not seeing your Unison, or you're just in a situation where you don't want to play your Unison turn 3, you can use the apes, which is just great to use for turn 2 or 3. And then, of course, we've got Barris for the super combos. This is just a multicolor. You get to restand your energy during your opponent's turn, which is going to help you use your arrival in the first place. And we'll get to that in a minute. First, we've got Mecha Friezas. If you have a multicolor already in your energy, then the energy exhaust of this card, you have no energy exhaust, which is good. So we have 4 copies of Frieza. That way we get to have the consistency that every turn we're having an energy stood up more often than not. I've seen a lot of regional plays and just top deck local plays where they seem to have a lot more turns where during their turn their energies aren't active and they have to rely more on their super combos. So we're trying to find that sweet spot where you're seeing it more often than not. And then we've got Frieza, the 1-cost Death Embrace. This card is a great little promo. I believe it was originally. No, it's a BT9. Oh, interesting. When this card is played, draw 1 card, and then it's got an activate battle if you wanted to. Choose up to one of your opponent's leader cards or battle cards and minus 10k for the duration of the battle. There have been situations where I've had to use that ability before, but there are a lot of times where you're not really using that. What you can do though, which is nice, is when you play Frieza, let's say like turn 1, turn 2, if it's in your hand, you can, let's say, attack with Frieza at your opponent, and then you can pay your 1 energy from this, the blue one, choose 1 red or blue Frieza clan from your battle area other than this card itself, return it to its owner's hand, play this card from your hand. Why do you want to play this card? Because of its auto once per turn. When this card attacks or is attacked, choose up to 1 red or blue multicolor in your drop and combo with it, which is very handy because now when you do that, and let's say you combo with your Barris or whatever other multicolor you have, you can now do another arrival. So that's very good. Also, if your opponent attacks it, but they're probably not going to attack it. They're probably just going to remove it because it has no barrier or deflect or anything. But still, it doesn't matter. It's more to help you get your arrivals out, so you just keep milling your opponent. And then, of course, we've got the Hercule Boo. This card is great. You can minus 10k their card. It costs 1 blue energy for the arrival. And you get to draw a card. So you keep some cards in your hand. It's a good card to play around like turn 2 or turn 3 if you can, just to get that early draw support for you. And then we've also got Cooler Tyrannical Assault. This card is a lot of fun. This is the powerhouse of the chain for the deck. It is Arrival Red-Blue, and it costs the 1 red energy, double strike, 20k. When you play this card, your opponent has to already first mill the top card of their deck, and then you can choose up to 2 of their battle cards, ignoring barrier, and they get minus 10k. So that's going to be potentially 3 cards they have to mill, which is very good. And then we've got Chilled, the new card that came from the whatever box it was recently. But this is a good card. You can Arrival play it for 2. It's a dual attack blocker, and it's got its on-play effect, which is look at the top 5, add a Frieza clan, shuffle your deck, choose one of their cards, ignoring barrier gets minus 15k. But you can also combo with this, because the permanent here, if you have a red-blue multicolor in your energy, reduce the combo cost of this card in your hand by 1. Then we also have Cooler, the one of for a little boss monster for the deck. At first, I was running no boss monsters for a while, and it came to a point where if you're, say, extending the game and your opponent's just not milling out quite yet because they're just countering what you're doing, you know, maybe you're in a bad matchup out of the few games that you have. Well, this is just a great card to be able to throw on the field that one of. When this card is played or attacks, so that's already 2 times now, because it's not once per turn, Your opponent places the top card of their deck in the drop area, then choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards and it gets minus 25k for the turn. And at the end of the turn, you can bounce this card back to your hand and restand a multicolor energy if you need to. I have actually done that quite a lot, just so that I keep the card in hand and I'm not afraid to just boost with it then next turn when I attack with something else. Then we've also got the gohans. This makes the deck a lot more expensive. There are other things you can do to make it cheaper. I've added them in the side deck that we can take a look shortly at. But this card in general, if you have 4 or less lives, becomes a 1-cost card that you play. And you can choose up to 7 of your opponent's battle cards or unisons and they get minus 10k. And if you choose at least 5 or more with the skill, the gohan gets 10k and double strike, which is just really good. So just imagine if your opponent had, like, say, legitimately 4 cards on the field and they're counterplaying and playing, an additional card. And this card gets played, like actually official played. You're going to just minus 10 to all of them. That's like 4 or 5 cards they're milling already off that, which is very good. And a lot of people these days try to run, like, as short 250 cards as they can. That way the decks are more consistent. So this will just mill them out even faster. Then we've got the ultimate for the deck, which is the unbridled power. Now, there are other choices you can use, but I own this card, so I thought, you know what, I'll just use this instead. It has been great for me as like the extra kind of finisher as a boss monster, because you get your opponent down to typically like 1 or usually 2 lives at that point in double strike range, and then they will be more inclined to take 1 damage rather than you swinging with, let's say, your tyrannical assault, because they're obviously just going to counter that. So if I attack with something that's more of just a single hit, like let's say the Boo or whatever else, they're more inclined to be like, okay, I'll go to 1. It sounds a bit weird, but it happens a lot. And then of course, if you're sparking 25, which probably is not going to happen, but you're still triple strike, ultimate deflect, dual attack. And what you can do with this card is when you play it, you give minus 5k to your opponent's leader for the turn. And then you can remove this card from the game once you've attacked with it. And then you can get rid of all their battle cards and unisons ignoring barrier. And they have to crit a life. So then game over. And then for the last card of the deck, this is just a one-of. I find it has been quite helpful for later games if you're just having a tough time finding your super combos. We have the one-of... We are Universe 7, and what you're using this card for is to grab your super combo from your drop. Choose up to 1 Universe 7 card from your drop, add it to your hand. So you got to pay 1 energy for it, but then you can bounce this back to your hand, which is just really good to have. And then, of course, for the Z deck, we have the Vegetas. You can minus cards. It's going to be a strong little damage for the deck as well. We've got this. They can, it's just 20k double strike for the deck as well. We have Cell for a bit of removal. It costs 3 blue, so if you've got enough multicolors in your energy, or you can play this. And this card, of course, if you've swallowed up 4 or more, and not swallowed up, I guess so. If you've swallowed up 4 or more cards, and you get rid of those 4 cards, this card gets triple strike for the turn. So it'll be a dual attack, triple strike, deflect, critical. So it's good field removal. And then we've got the 2 Vegetas for Self-Awakening. Then we also have the side deck. So we already mentioned Dirty Burst, and we took a look at that. I believe it's still a very good choice instead of the After Image if you're not going to run it. And then, of course, we have the Gohanks. Now, this card is very good for this deck, but I can't be asked buying it right now, so I'll stick with my Unbridled Power. This card is very good for the deck. You pay 5 and then 4, sorry. And when this card is played, choose all your opponent's battle cards, ignoring barrier, and they get minus 25k for the turn. So that's just gonna help mill completely. And when your opponent attacks a battle card, you may choose it, and it gets minus 25k. So it's kind of like the Boo Unison, but you're plussing 1, which is even better. This card gets 15k power and triple strike for the turn. At the end of your turn, switch this card to active mode. So this is the deck, and we've got 2 little other choices. If you want to run a tool instead of We Are Universe 7, you can run the Reality Bender Janemba. And if you pretty much have no battle cards in your battle area, you can play this. And at the end of your turn, you get rid of this card. And, of course, they place top 2 cards from the top of the deck in the drop, which is really cool to have as well. We've also got the Cooler, the Calculating Warrior. This is a pretty decent card. It helps with having some more non-energy exhaust cards for your energy. And, of course, when you when your opponent mills a card, you can play this, and then when this is played, you choose one of their battle cards and it gets minus 15k, so then they're going to mill another card, which is very good. And what we're looking at here for turns 1, 2, and 3, I would say charge a multicolor energy, play a 1-cost Frieza if you can. You get to draw 1 off the card, which is great. End your turn, and if you've got a super combo in hand, you would more than likely want a rival play, probably Hercule or even the Cooler if you want to go aggressive. And then turn 2, I would keep cards in your hand by playing the 1-cost Friezas and the Hercules. Additionally, attack with a Frieza, combo attack Cooler, or use the activate battle of it, return it to your hand, and then you get to play the Cooler. And when the Cooler is played, when you attack with him, you get to boost with the super combo or multicolor that's in your drop as a free combo, and then you can rival play again, which is good. Defending turns, try to play rivals minus their cards as much as possible, just to keep their field empty, because you can hit barrier a lot as well in this deck, which is good. Keep cards in your hand, use your counters, restand energies as much as you can. And then turn 3, I would probably play a Unison, use your draw apes instead if you can't. And for defense, just try to use Oceania around turn 3 or turn 4 for defense. It's very good. So, I'll put a link in the description for this deck list if you're interested. I hope you liked the video. If you like it, you like it. You don't, you don't. Thanks for watching. Peace.